Welcome to the Home Birth After Cesarean podcast. Due to the rate of unnecessary C-sections, the lack of support, and limited options for VBAC moms in the hospital, more and more women are choosing to have their VBAC babies at home. This podcast was created for women to share and listen to stories of home birth after cesarean. I'm your host, Rachael Garrett. Today we're chatting with Rachael, and she is going to share her two birth stories with us. So Rachael, if you just want to give us an introduction, that would be great.
Yeah. So my name's Rachael. I'm from Idaho. I currently live in North Idaho. I have two little kids, a girl, Violet, she's 4.5, and Jasper, he is 18 months old. They are so fun to play with all day long. I'm also an artist, so I make art all day long as well.
Very cool. I love those names, by the way. Both of those names are super sweet and unique. I haven't heard Jasper before. I really like that.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you just want to take us to wherever you want to start, if it's with Violet's pregnancy or anything before that, you just take us there.
So when I found out I was pregnant with Violet, I was super excited. I had planned to have a natural birth. I'm one of those people that likes to do things the natural way, holistic, just as clean as possible. That's just something that's always been my mindset. And so I had started planning out a natural birth, an unmedicated birth. But when the 20-week ultrasound came around, we found out that I had placenta previa, which is the placenta lies across the cervix. They said it was possible it could move out of the way, but it didn't end up moving out of the way. So I had to schedule a cesarean, and that was a real bummer. And I had a really hard time accepting that and grasping that for pretty much the rest of the pregnancy. It did take me some time to really grasp that, but I did finally feel okay with that. I was going to say both of our lives, basically. There was no other way around it.
Right. That's one of those things where, I mean, a C-section is 100%
Yeah.
necessary because there's no way that baby can be born when the placenta is covering the cervix.
Yep.
So how did the C-section go, and then how was recovery in that postpartum time afterwards?
So the C-section was planned at 36 weeks, which is a little early. It could have been earlier, but I'm glad it was just at 36 weeks. I did have a midwife that I kept care with through the whole entire pregnancy. So I'm really grateful for that. And she worked well with the OB that performed the cesarean. When the cesarean finally came time to happen, this is a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember it now. I remember I felt pretty calm going into the cesarean. Like, I just felt everything's going to be okay. I'm going to meet my baby soon. It's going to be all right. And the procedure went fine. There was no problems. They did have to really nudge her out of me. Like, they were pressing on my ribs so much. I thought for sure I was going to have broken ribs or bruised body when she came out, but I was totally fine. It just took a lot of nudging to get her out. She wasn't ready to come out yet.
She was still pretty high up in your ribs then, you mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They didn't want me going into labor at all. And I didn't feel any labor whatsoever.
So then how was that immediate postpartum time after she was born? Was there anything else in the OR, or once you were in the recovery room or back in the hospital room?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, like I said, before the cesarean and even during the cesarean, I felt really calm and I felt very okay. And then basically, as soon as she was taken out of me and whisked away into the NICU, I just felt all the calmness just leave. And I just felt completely like alone and just drained of life almost. I don't know how else to describe it. And I kind of stuck with those feelings for a long time after she was with me. which it kind of affected our bonding. I had a hard time bonding with her for a really long time.
How long was she in the NICU for?
Only like 6 hours. She was great.
Good. I mean, that's a good thing, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you hear the stories where it's days or weeks or months or, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
It was a procedure to take her there immediately because she was early.
How long were you guys in the hospital for then afterwards?
About 3 days. I think they wanted to keep us there one more day, but I wanted to be out. So we had to
Yeah,
sleep.
it's kind of exhausting being, I mean, you just had a baby and then everything, they have nurses coming in and checking on you, checking on baby, doing all the things, and you just
Uh,
kind of are itching to get back home and be in your own bed after a couple nights.
oh yeah.
So then how was that transition back home in those first couple weeks postpartum with a new baby?
They had their ups and downs. It was breastfeeding was hard because she came early and my milk was not ready. I wasn't producing colostrum or anything for at least 2 weeks. So I was pumping, trying to get things stimulated, and while feeding her formula and bringing her to the breast whenever I could. And I kept going at it and going at it, and finally started producing milk. And so that was a lot of work, a lot of effort. But after about 2 months, I was able to breastfeed her exclusively. So it was worth the effort. It was really important to me that I could do that because I couldn't have the birth that I wanted. So I wanted to at least be able to feed her how I wanted.
That's exactly how I felt after my son's C-section too. I can completely relate to that. Like, this is not the birth that I had planned or that I wanted for you,
Yeah.
but I really, really want to breastfeed. That was like the next most important thing to me after the birth.
Mhm.
So I completely understand what you mean by
Yeah.
that. So then after her birth, did you always know that you wanted to have a VBAC, or how did that kind of come into play?
Oh yeah, before she was even born, I was like, the next one is going to be a VBAC. Because I already
Awesome.
had that in my mindset. And my midwife, she actually was very supportive of that too. She's like, your next one can have a VBAC. It's going to be great. So she was very supportive. I like that.
Did you always know that you wanted to have a VBAC at home, or were you kind of weighing options between home and the hospital, or how did that process go?
Well, I have always been open to like alternative methods. I always had an open mind for home births or birth centers, but I wasn't planning on it for the second time yet. I was kind of hoping for a birth center birth because my husband was actually a little nervous about doing a home birth. And so a birth center felt like a good middle ground. But when we were looking around for birth centers for our second birth, we were actually in the process of moving at the time when I was pregnant with our second child, and so we had to find a completely new provider. And the new town we were going to, the hospitals there to start with don't allow VBACs at all. So a hospital was already out of my plan because I wasn't going to have another C-section. And there was one birth center in our town, our new town, and the birth center actually didn't allow VBACs either. The state wouldn't allow it. But the midwives there, they could attend my birth as a home birth. So that's kind of how the home birth idea happened.
And how did that conversation go with your husband then? How did you guys kind of work through any fears that he might have had or start to prepare for having a home birth?
Well, actually, when I got off the call with the midwife, I told him, I'm like, a home birth is the only option we've got. And I was kind of stressing out and worried. And he's like, okay, a home birth is what we're going to do. You've got to do this. This is the right choice for us. So he was on board before I was even all the way on board.
That's awesome that he was able to just say, "Okay, yep, this is
Yeah.
what we're gonna do then." To have that support, because that support can make a big difference sometimes in planning for
Mm-hmm.
a home birth or a hospital birth, or I mean any kind of birth, you need
Yeah.
support. So that's great that he was supportive of that then. So then how did that pregnancy go? And then was there anything that you did specifically to prepare for a VBAC?
The pregnancy was great. No exciting things like placenta previa. I read a lot of books. I've already have an interest in birth stuff, so it's fun to me to read about birth and listen to birth podcasts and watch birth videos and just kind of immerse myself in all that. And I went out seeking specifically home births and VBAC home births to just kind of prepare myself.
You were with the midwife that was at the birth center. Did you do all your prenatal care with them then too?
Yes, she came to my house, so for all of the prenatal visits, which was really nice. I could
That
just
is
stay
nice.
home and she'd come and check up on me. It was very personable because it wasn't just about checking the vitals. She, would chat with me, ask me how I'm doing, how my little girl's doing. So, it kind of became friends rather than just like a midwife patient relationship.
I've heard that from a lot of women that I've talked to, that they still are in contact with their midwives, or it was like an extension of family or a good friend and just someone that you can really be comfortable with and have a relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
So then was it just the one midwife that you had care with then, or were they on
Yeah.
like a rotation of some kind?
Well, I just had the one midwife and she had an assistant that came to the actual birth.
At what point did labor start for you then? And walk us through kind of what labor looked like leading up to birth.
So I was really excited to feel labor because I didn't get to feel anything like that with Violet. So I was really excited to actually experience contractions and going through the movements of labor. And labor with Jasper started at 38 weeks. At Sunday around like 2 a.m., I was feeling like these low back pains and kind of cramp feelings. And I actually didn't think that they were labor at all that I was experiencing. I thought it was just like pregnancy pains. So I got out of bed and kind of moved around a little bit, got a snack. I'm like, okay, this isn't getting better. I'll go take a bath. So I was taking a bath at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And the bath helped a little bit. And I think I slept in there for a little bit that night. And then around 7 o'clock in the morning, I kind of recognized that these pains were coming in like wave like feelings. And I'm like, oh crap, this is labor. I'm experiencing labor right now. This is what it feels like. Okay.
And how awesome that that was like an exciting thing for you and
Yeah.
not something to be feared, because you hear that like, oh, I don't want to feel the pain of labor. I don't want to feel contractions, but to be looking forward to experiencing labor and really
Uh-huh.
like seeing what that feels like, that's a great perspective to have going into it.
No, I loved the whole labor, even as it was getting more and more intense. I just focused more and more on my breath. That was my biggest thing I relied on, I think, was just my breath. I'm big into yoga and meditation, and so I'm already have a good practice of focusing on my breath and breathing deep into my body. And I think that helped a lot when things felt intense and maybe hard to handle.
Definitely. And that helps keep you calm too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I kept visualizing was like with each breath that I take, all of this oxygen is going straight to my baby. And so just that
Mm-hmm.
visualization can help keep you calm and feeling grounded and not freaking out. Even when
Yeah.
things kind of started to escalate or labor got a little bit more intense, it just helped keep you calm. So at what point in labor did your midwife and her assistant come over?
That Sunday afternoon, I called and told her what I was feeling, and the I started timing the contractions, and they weren't super consistent. So she said, "Well, it could just be prodromal labor," and my gut feeling didn't think that they were, but I was just like, "Okay, I'll just keep you in the loop. I'll let you know what's going on." So I went through the rest of that day with these inconsistent contractions. And then the next morning, they just felt closer together, a little bit more intense. So I called her again and I called my doula and I said, I think you guys need to come over soon. And I think my doula arrived sooner before my midwife. And then the midwives started setting everything up, and it started feeling real that everything was happening, and it was exciting.
So what time was that at? You said that was on Monday then?
Yes, that was on Monday around 10 o'clock in the morning.
Did you have plans to, I know a lot of women who have home births plan to do a water birth, or they have the birth tub. Was that something you had in mind, or did you not want to do the water birth?
I went into this birth with a very open mind. I didn't have like a very stick to plan. Like I didn't say, I'm going to have a water birth. I have to have a water birth. I kind of just said, yeah, we'll set up the water tub. If that happens, it'll happen. So we set up the water tub, and I didn't end up using it at all, but it worked out fine.
Where did you end up spending most of your labor, and then where did you eventually give birth?
Well, before we set up the water tub, I actually did spend a lot of time in our bathtub. So that's kind of funny. But when labor kept going, I was on the my goodness, what is that word? Exercise ball. I was enjoying that a lot, just swaying my hips around. I walked up them down the stairs a bit. The labor kind of was going consistently, but it wasn't growing, if that's the right word. So we were walking up and down the stairs a lot to hopefully get it going just a little bit further. And every time I walked the stairs, it did. It got more intense. But as soon as I would stop or sit down, it kind of slowed down a little bit. So then we ended up in my bedroom, and we started doing the Miles circuit routine to hopefully get baby in a better position, because the midwife thought that maybe he was just tilted weird or just not in a right spot to get into the right birthing position. So we started doing that with my doula's help. My husband was putting our other daughter to sleep at that point. So this is like a whole day of moving on the exercise ball and stairs and wherever I felt like being.
So then at what point did it start to pick up? Because that was all on Monday still, you said, right?
Yeah, this was all on Monday still. During the second position of the Miles circuit routine, I was on my bed, and about halfway through, my water broke. And that's when everything just picked up really fast and a lot more intense. And I could feel this baby coming.
Yeah, it kind of takes away that cushion that you had, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, these are real contractions now.
Uh-huh.
So then how long after your water broke was it until he was actually born?
Somewhere between 7 and 9 is when my water broke. And Jasper was born around 11:40. So my water broke. And because I don't know if laws are different anywhere else, but in Idaho, once I get into active pushing labor, I have 2 hours to basically push a baby out, or I have to get transferred to the hospital. So after my water broke, sometime after that is when that timer basically started. I remember I felt a little pressured around that time because I did not want to go to the hospital to have this baby. And I have no idea what the time was. Like, I was just like, okay, this baby's coming, come on. And I was trying every position. I was on the floor for a while on hands and knees. And that felt good. I was having lots of pressure on my back. And so that kind of relieved a little bit of the pain for a while. And then I tried a squatting position on a birthing stool that my midwife brought, but that wasn't working either. So then we moved to the bed, and I kind of leaned against my husband in the final parts, and he helped support me near that end. And even when the things were intense, I was still enjoying labor for the most part. When like transition hit, that was pretty much the only time I felt like I couldn't do it. I felt, oh my gosh, this is too much. This is a lot on my body. What's going on? This is too hard. I can't do it. And I actually said that out loud. And those aren't words that I usually say out loud. Like I don't usually say I can't do it. But I did. And my midwife and my doula, my husband, all of them basically at the same time, they're like, you can do it. You're doing it. You can do it. You're strong. And I can't remember if I repeated those words or not, but I knew it and I knew I could do it. And I did it.
And that's super common when you hit transition to
Yeah.
hit that like, I can't do this. This is crazy. What am I doing? Type of mindset. So it's awesome that you had a good circle of support around you to remind you, like, yes, you can do this, or you are actually doing this right now.
Mm-hmm. It was such a weird sensation to experience, just have it being on like this brooding high of experienced labor, then all of a sudden just terrified and scared and not sure if I could do it. But it's just amazing how it all works out.
Yeah, your body was made to be able to do that. It knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
So then how was the immediate postpartum time after Jasper was born, or what did that look like?
That was great. It was so different than Violet's. I mean, as soon as Jasper was brought onto my chest, basically, I was just like, oh my gosh, I did this. And after, like, as soon as after he was born, I felt like I was on a high. Like, I was just the happiest I'd ever felt. I felt good, even though my body had just gone through this major experience and I was tired. I just felt great. And that lasted for like a while. I felt good. Mindset, body wise. It was
And
very different. Healing wise, I felt like I healed pretty good. I think it was easier than the cesarean for sure. There was different parts that were like obviously my vaginal area was a lot more sore than a cesarean, but I felt great.
that's
I could do it
awesome.
again after that. But it just felt great. I felt like I could do anything after that.
Yeah, people talk about that birth high. It just
Yeah.
it does make you feel like I could literally do anything. You just feel like the strongest person in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember anything about the birth of the placenta?
A little bit. I didn't give much attention to it as I was giving birth to it because I think I was just giving all my attention to Jasper and he was just so cute. And then I did end up keeping the placenta to encapsulate it though. So
Where was Violet during the whole birth? Was she around or was she not at the house?
no, she was around. We had moved to a new town, so I didn't know anybody, so I couldn't just give her to someone to watch. And I was okay with her being there if she wanted to be a part of it. She wasn't terribly interested ever. She just kind of played around for the most part. My husband and the doula took turns taking care of her, giving her lunch and snacks. And once she went to bed, she was in bed, and that's when we had Jasper. So it worked out great.
And then she got to wake up in the morning and
Yeah.
baby was here. That's kind of
Yep.
a fun surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you can think of just from your story, both of your stories that we didn't touch on? Or
Well, after Jasper's birth was the first time I told my family that I had home birth. They had been thinking I was going to give birth at a birth center the whole time because I didn't want to tell them.
what was that reaction like?
Well, my grandma, she was a NICU nurse, so she's seen a lot of stuff. And so when I told her, she kind of freaked out a little bit. And she's like, oh my gosh, Rachel, I can't believe you just did this. I can't believe you had a VBAC at home. I can't believe it. Once I told her about all of the stuff that midwives bring, she felt a little better about it.
Mm-hmm. That's I have some family who works in the medical field, and when we were planning our home birth, there were just certain people that we just didn't share our plans with because it was very much like, I know you're going to tell me like all the horror stories that you've seen in the hospital, and it's just not something that I can mentally take on
Yeah.
right now. Do you have any advice or anything that you've learned in your journey through your 2 birth stories for women who are maybe contemplating having a home birth after a C-section or just kind of weighing their different options?
I would say educate yourself, read about other people's experiences, listen to podcasts, trust your intuition. That was a major part in all of my decisions. Just trusting my own gut, knowing what was right for myself and for my babies.
Well, thank you so much for being willing to share your stories and talk a little bit about them. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Home Birth After Cesarean podcast. Make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in sharing your home birth after cesarean story, send us an email at hbacpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week.